Hello everyone and welcome to this edition of Vox Pops. I'm delighted to be joined by a very special guest, Rania Robinson, who is CEO of Quiet Storm. Rania, welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Not at all, our pleasure. Please tell everyone just a little bit about Quiet Storm for anyone who might not be familiar with you guys.
Okay, so we are an independent creative agency and we produce all our own work. So probably best known for the work we've done for the likes of Haribo and On the Beach. But yeah, work with lots of kind of different types of brands.
Yeah, fantastic. So what we wanted to chat to you about today is, I suppose, in summary, the intersection between technology and creativity, get a perspective from you running a creative agency as to how that interface plays out. So let's kick off with a perspective from you on, now that we're in a sort of an increasingly tech-reliant world, how can creative industries stay innovative and adapt to changing trends, perhaps using tech tools to help them with that adaptation?
Well, tech has always been an incredible facilitator, and I think this is where sometimes the lines get a little bit confused, I think, versus a creative, well, it's a creative tool, but more from a facilitation process. I think what it's enabled us to do over the years is get to consumers in different ways, understand the consumer behaviour better, be much more focused and targeted around how we target people, but also create more opportunities, environments for experiences. And I guess most recently, helping us get to creative output a lot quicker with the whole advancement of AI. I think, yeah, but it's still very much, in my mind, a facilitator, not the kind of overall answer to the creative solution, if you like.
And it's really interesting that you raise AI straight out the gate, because that was, I suppose everyone's talking about it, right? No. But because I think we find ourselves here at ExchangeWire in particular talking a lot about that interface between, creativity and technology, and where the human interface is there and who is driving what element of it. So give me your perspective on how AI and automation is impacting the sort of production of creative assets and just the design and the design process and the general creative process.
I mean, quite honestly, we're still at the experimentation phase, if I'm honest. I think what we're finding at the moment is our creatives are using it as a tool to get to things like concept visuals quicker, and kind of, very much at the kind of end of the process, if you like. I think what we're finding is there's still kind of work, it's still in the early stages of being really, I think, probably a really credible replacement for more traditional design and kind of sourcing and creative, asset creation and development kind of resources that you would normally use. But I think we're definitely finding that we are doing some interesting things with it that's helping our creative art directors, writers, copywriters, probably more in some ways use it as a design tool in some ways, and help them find imagery quicker and composite imagery together to develop sort of key visuals and things like that. It's certainly not at a point where we would think that the output is going to be, is better than a final finished designer curated piece of work. But we're certainly, using it and experiencing, kind of playing with it and seeing how far we can go with it. So I think that's been a very sort of sudden, recent shift, I would say. We're playing a bit with ChatGPT. I think there's huge, kind of failings with it at the moment. There's some, you wouldn't rely on it entirely. But I think, again, it's something that we're playing with and experimenting with just to see where we're at with what's possible, I think, more than seeing it as a credible replacement. As I said, I think, it's not going to be long before it may well be, but I think at the moment we're still experimenting with it all.
It's such an interesting point in time, really, isn't it? Because I think, even in our core business here at ExchangeWire, we're doing a similar thing with ChatGPT, sort of playing around to see what it does with copywriting and, writing marketing campaigns and those sorts of things. But I would, I feel very similarly to you that for us it's a moment of experimentation and maybe enabling us to sort of open up our eyes to different ways to express ourselves. Absolutely not a replacement of the human element. But that is also another really important point I just want to explore a little bit further too, because with the sort of increased automation of especially the way that we're delivering marketing and advertising these days, do you find that your creative teams are getting more used to perhaps using some of these tech tools and solutions to either experiment or maybe enhance the way that they're designing creative campaigns? Is that also leading to different ways of working together? Are you seeing that that's impacting the way that teams interact and maybe breaking down some silos that used to exist before?
I think our teams are definitely embracing new technologies. I think we are in an environment where we have to be leaner as businesses. We've got to be tighter. The margins aren't there. They aren't there in the way that they used to be. So we have to be much more efficient. So I think that's I guess, not what's necessarily driving it, because I think creatives are naturally curious and experimental and, you know, explorative. So I think they're just excited about the possibilities of what's available. But I think also there's a very practical need to do stuff quicker and cheaper and with less resource. So sadly, it's sad that it's you know, from the human impact perspective, and you know, that's, to be honest, it's not necessarily, because with any revolution with technology, things just change and roles change, and I don't think in the long term it necessarily means that. But I think certainly I've got sort of slightly mixed feelings about it, because I do think, you know, we're a business that's about craft. We're a relatively boutique-sized independent, so we've never been a scale-type business that's all about churning stuff out. We've always been about the craft and doing stuff that's really, you know, connects on a human level. So if I'm really honest, there's a slight, you know, I've got mixed feelings about the whole. There is a conflict with it, but I think you can't deny that actually it's a useful tool, and it is definitely helping plug the resource gap a bit with the guys. Not completely, but it feels like it's definitely aiding the process, and it's actually enabling our creatives to think more like creative directors or art directors, you know, or you know, and you know, and we're not ChatGPT. We've not quite really got much use out of it from a copywriting perspective. If I'm really honest, we're playing around with it still. I think it's really more the visualization side, where we're getting the most use out of it. But I think even at that point, the writers would shift to become more editors, I guess. So it's just like anything, new technology, it just changes role functions, doesn't it? It doesn't necessarily eliminate roles. No,
absolutely not. I mean, I'd concur with you. My personal opinion is that we'll never eliminate the, I hope, we'll never eliminate the human element. Otherwise, it just flushes up so many, issues, and also would be existential crisis moment, because it would be, I don't know, sad if humans weren't involved in all of that creativity. But exploring that again another step further, do you think that maybe some of those tools, particularly AI tools, and maybe just in general some creative tools that you're using, that your agency's using in a day-to-day context, do you think that that's opened the door at all to enabling sort of more diversity in creativity, and maybe encouraging those that didn't think they were particularly creative, or felt like creative pursuits were quite far away from their life experience, to explore that a bit more? I think technology, generally speaking, has, if you look back at history and more recent time, it's all about accessibility, isn't it? It drives accessibility, and it democratises a lot of things, a lot of access. So I think what we're finding, again, it needs, you know, like any great creative output needs good creative input. So I think, you know, I found our planners have played with it a bit when they're trying to, you know, mock things up that they wouldn't ordinarily do, in truth, but they, you know, they'll experiment with it as well. So I guess that, I would say that's making somebody who wouldn't necessarily see themselves as a creative, or see themselves as somebody that would put a piece of visualization or work together like that, they're playing with it as well. So I think, it will democratise creativity, like everything has. If we think about the advancements of technology, that's, you know, everyone's a photographer now, aren't they? Everyone's, good point, you know, a producer and a you know, and a creator, and so I think the same thing will happen with all of this as well. And how do you think that's impacting the benefit for clients, and for, you know, and for the, perhaps, you know, particularly because you're a very purpose-led agency, are you working with clients and brands that are particularly excited about that, finding new ways to do things, or? Not necessarily. I think our clients ultimately care about the end results. How we get there is, you know, obviously cost efficiencies are becoming more and more important to every business. How do you get great results
for less money. You know, people want more for less. So I think if it allows us to get to great places efficiently for them, I think that's what their main interest in it, if I'm honest. Yeah, the less so the process, less so the kind of the what's and the hows, and it's really more, well, what are the outputs, really. So if we're getting to things quicker, then I think, and still, because I think that's the important point to make here. It's not just about getting stuff out and getting stuff done. You've got to protect the creative integrity and the craft, and I think for us that's where it will, and unless it's really comparative in terms of craft, we would always, so for example, we might use AI visualization at kind of pitch stage, conceptual stage, but we certainly wouldn't
when you're actually doing delivering the work.
Certainly at the moment, we wouldn't see it as an adequate replacement. So it's just figuring out what its role is currently in the process.
And then moving beyond AI as a particular tool, thinking about perhaps the wider suite of technology tools and solutions that you might use, and also the ways in which our working lives have changed since the pandemic. How do you think that you're sort of using and harnessing technology to work in different ways? And is it having an impact on the way that your business works, the way that your team interacts and works? I'm thinking here, you know, about trying to perhaps engage members of staff that aren't always in the office, or perhaps working with clients across international borders.
I mean, this has been the big shift, I guess, post-pandemic, isn't it? Is the conferencing kind of facility. It's massively opened up the country and the world to the agencies. So, you know, it would have been unthinkable before, really, which is crazy now when you think about it, isn't it? You go, like, we'd be travelling to wherever in the country, wherever outside the country, to get to a meeting that would last 2 or 3 hours and then all the way back. I mean, how inefficient. And don't get me wrong, there's an important role for face-to-face, there's an important role for human interaction in the room, and we definitely really think about which meetings need to be face-to-face versus the ones that are more functional, probably, where you could just do a quick video call. So the video calling thing has definitely, again, it's all about efficiency. So, you know, at the moment, I mean, there's obviously lots of technology that's more about experience and all that sort of stuff. But I think with that, it does feel like it's more efficiency. It would never replace the experience of being in a room with someone, I would argue. Absolutely not. But it's definitely more efficient. What it does also allow is for us to work with different types of talent in different parts of the country, which opens up your talent pool, and also makes it much more inclusive, because you can open it up to people that aren't based in London, that can't necessarily, don't want to be in London or can't afford to be in London, or people with, you know, disabilities that would struggle to be that mobile and getting into this. So I think that's what we found, is that it's just opened up the talent pool, and it's also created a much more flexible approach as well for you know, people that have got childcare responsibilities, or people that want to quite simply just get to the gym in the morning and just still be on at the time they need to be on, having had a workout, or whatever it is that, you know, whatever, you know, it is that...
Balancing their lives,
and making it a little bit more, enriched with personal stuff. I mean, the downside is obviously you're available everywhere, anywhere, any moment.
Theory, yes.
And that's what emails did, isn't it? Or, you know, to all of us. You know, before, like, you were on holiday, like, no one's getting in touch with you, and then emails changed that forever.
Can't even remember that time anymore.
Well, exactly. It's a long time ago. So that's the danger, is that it's you, and also that you jam pack. You know, the amount of meetings that you get in, your jam packs. Like, whereas before you'd have a breathing space of getting to another meeting, like a half an hour walk, or in a cab, or whatever it is, or on the train, just to decompress. So, and the sedentary nature of it is obviously a bit of a challenge. I mean, sometimes I think, God, I haven't actually got out of this chair all day. So that, like any technology, there's pros and cons, isn't there? Like any new thing, and I think, again, that's something that we have to balance and manage.
And then thinking about the, you know, the points that you raised initially in answer to that question, so the sort of ability to, you know, create a more sort of inclusive workforce and so forth. Are you seeing that have an impact on the output of your creative work?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're a talent-led business, aren't we? So the more access to talent and the more diverse that talent is, the more, you know, creativity is like often, particularly in a market that's so little differentiation, there's so little competitive advantage these days with our brands, with agencies, so actually anyone who's going to bring something different is brilliant, and people with different lived experiences from different, you know, so yeah, I mean, we're a massive advocate, like we're massive, you know, advocates of diversity, and yeah, you do see the impact because you see really fresh thinking.
And are you finding any clients coming to you sort of specifically for that, looking for that sort of wider, broader perspective?
We've had some specifically. I think the challenge I find, if I'm really honest, is they'll come to you with a very specific cultural problem or a very specific audience-led kind of brief or something like that, which is sort of missing the point. The point is you need...
Open things up rather than close things down.
Yeah, it's not... Just because people come from a certain background doesn't mean they can't find interesting new solutions to mainstream problems. And actually, you know, so I think that's where people get it a little bit wrong. They're sort of missing the point.
Yep.
What we're saying is what you need is a fresh perspective on traditional, like more traditional, more mainstream, more established, more, you know, business challenges. Not, okay, well, we're targeting this group of people, so let's go to an agency that's got a diversity kind of focus, if you like, or let's look at kind of urban culture. So that's where I think sometimes people miss the point. So I think that's still a bit misunderstood.
I feel as though we're sort of still at the beginning of that journey, because I feel as though I've had a few conversations with people over the last few months in the industry about the notion of diversifying your sort of media output means, you know, being more inclusive rather than more specific. So think about widening your message, think about widening your briefs rather than narrowing things down.
Exactly. I think sometimes we think we've made more progress than we have, if I'm really honest. And the kind of the noise, the share of voice doesn't really equal the significant behavioural change that we're hoping, we were hoping to have, that you'd think we've achieved, given all the noise around it. And I think what can be frustrating is the deprioritisation in challenging times. And again, that shows a real lack of understanding of the point of it. The point of it is that it helps you get to better places commercially, helps you get to better places from a business perspective. So it shouldn't be deprioritised like it's a kind of charitable thing or it's a nice to have. Yeah, exactly. So I think, again, that's where you really see the misunderstandings of the point of diversity. Although we sort of know, like rationally, we kind of know, because there's lots of studies and data that supports the fact that it's good for business, and we sort of all know that, and that's the narrative that's going around. But I think in practice, it's still not really coming through. And I think in difficult times, we revert to comfortable behaviour. We convert to what's familiar, what we know, so people sort of shift back into old habits and behaviours. So I think there's still work to be done there.
It's a reminder of how difficult it is to change behaviour, right?
It really
even
is.
our own behaviour
really
on a day-to-day basis, let alone, you know, cultural behaviour and an entire, you know, perhaps society and generations worth of behaviour. Exactly.
Deeply ingrained stuff that's not going to change overnight.
Very fast. In summary, because we've run out of time, could I get from you a bit of a perspective on where you would like to see technology take the creative side of the industry over the coming years? What are some of the things that perhaps you're excited about, or some of the hopes that you've got for where technology could take us?
I want it to make things better, you know, but from a human experience perspective, very much through the human experience. And I think, you know, that's again back to the tension of, you know, and you know, fundamentally, you know, we haven't changed that much as human beings. Like, our evolution process is slow compared to technology. So there's a lot of... our behaviour's changed, obviously, because technology's kind of informed that, but actually our deep psyche, our deep motivations, our deep emotional needs, they haven't really changed. So I think for me it's really important that we don't lose sight of that, the humanity of it, because I think we can get really excited about new tech and think about the functionality of it and design experiences or design communication, all that sort of suits the tech, but doesn't actually suit the human experience. So for me, it's got to really continue to enhance the human experience, and definitely not replace it, hopefully.
Yeah, that completely sounds familiar to me. If I think about some of the core topics that we spend our time focusing on here at ExchangeWire, which is much more the tech side of media and marketing and advertising and execution rather than the creative. We do obviously spend time having conversations about creative, but I think people are starting to see that from the same side, even on the technology side of the coin, that we must stop thinking about the use and application of tech tools as it being transactional and there's a user or a consumer on the end of it. Actually, there's people on the end of it, and we need instead to be thinking about improving the experience from a holistic point of view. So, yeah, maybe our worlds are coming closer together after all, which would be great. Rania, thanks so much for making some time to come and speak to us today, and thank you very much for watching.